Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. Weather in 5 days and 5 minutes. Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. The New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area's go-to place for everything you need for winter storm cleanups, including the largest supply of rock salt anywhere in the tri-state area at the lowest prices in town, plus snow blowers, spreaders, shovels, whatever you need. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. Again, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. And the website is omnitruevalue.com. So here's our storm system this morning. And before I get into this, let me just really quick. We are having our usual Sunday morning Joe and Joe weather show at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So mark it down. And we'll be, of course, freshening everything up and updating things as we're going along. But look how impressive the radar signature is this morning in the southeastern part of the United States, and the bitter cold air that's up in the northeast is wedged all the way down through the mountains of the Carolinas and into North Georgia. I'm in North Georgia right now in the northeastern Georgia mountains under a winter storm warning, and I got about on the lead precip, which I wasn't supposed to get very much as far as anything snow-wise because it was going to be too warm. I actually wound up with 1.5 inches. Now I'm sort of at that hole you see there because we're waiting for the upper low to come in. But there has been, for some areas here, down to just north of Atlanta, accumulating snows that fell during the overnight hours that covered up roadways, and looking at observations into western South Carolina and western North Carolina, also during the overnight, but now with snow, but now because freezing rain has gotten into the mix too. There's significant icing going on in some of the mountains here in northwestern South Carolina. Now, that whole area is going to be moving up the eastern seaboard. And right now, other than some ocean effect that is going on this morning along parts of the New Jersey shore, if you look really close, you could see these echoes are so low to the ground that the radar has a real tough time picking them up. But we're seeing a little bit of that, what looks like that graying in southern Monmouth and over in Ocean County. That is actually ocean effect, the wind coming in off the warm water into the bitter cold air. And again, we mentioned yesterday, it's just so hard to believe that as cold as it is this morning with temperatures in the single digits for lows, that there are going to be areas along the coast that are going to pretty much be all rain with this from start to finish. So let's take a look at what to expect with regards to snow amounts. And for the coastal areas, Southeastern New England, Long Island, coastal New Jersey, this is going to be a rain event unless you get a couple of snowflakes or ice pellets at the very start. The story here for these coastal areas, coastal flood watches are up with also coastal flood advisories. Delaware and New Jersey under advisories at the moment. Coastal flood watches up for Long Island, the south shore of Connecticut to Westchester County, and in the counties of New Jersey that surround New York Harbor. Also coastal flood watches and high wind warnings up for southeastern New England with gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour expected. Wind advisories for everybody else down the coast with gusts of 40 to 50 possible. Now, as far as snow amounts are concerned, we've seen no major changes in the overnight snowfall forecasts across the Northeast. You're seeing, generally, this is whatever happens before any changeover to rain, which is going to work its way up northward. In lower elevation areas in upstate New York, for example, we're going to see probably several inches to maybe half a foot at most. But go west of the Hudson, and particularly in the Catskills, and you start to get some higher elevation, big amounts. Northern New Jersey, 3 or 4 inches in the northwestern corner, maybe a coating to 1 inch or 2 elsewhere. Most of this is going to fall north and west of the Turnpike. Also down into southeastern Pennsylvania, a coating to 1 inch. You start to get into higher numbers as you move into southeastern Pennsylvania, southeast central Pennsylvania, going westward, where we're looking at 2 to 4. But you really have to go to the western half of Pennsylvania and on up into southwestern and western New York. This is where you're going to get the jackpot here as far as snowfall is concerned. Further south, we're looking at Central New Jersey, mainly, if you go west of I-81, you're talking 6 to 10 inches, maybe a foot plus in some of the higher elevations there. And heading down into North Carolina, looking at a coating to a couple of inches back through parts of, say, from Raleigh-Durham to Salem, Greensboro, and Winston. Charlotte, only about an inch. You go further south, you start to see in Greenville in South Carolina picking up 4. Asheville 5, but surrounding areas in the mountains are going to get a foot plus. Northeast Georgia, looking at elevations above 2,500 feet, probably getting at least 8 to 12. The lower elevations, anywhere from 2 to as much as 5. Oh, I got my power back. Glory. And even down to, you get down close to Atlanta, it's a coating to an inch, but just north and east of Atlanta, we're looking at several inches or more. The higher the elevations the higher the elevation, the better in terms of snowfall. Robust amounts for Tennessee, Kentucky, up to about half a foot into West Virginia. And this is where we have, of course, a wide variety of winter storm warnings throughout upstate New York and New England, warnings extending down through the Catskills, Monroe and Carbon County in eastern Pennsylvania. But winter weather advisories cut Pennsylvania in half. So the eastern half of the state, northern New Jersey, generally I would say west and north of the Turnpike and west of 287 under winter weather advisories, also into the Hudson Valley and on up into Connecticut. Further south, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, winter weather advisories there, running down the coast through Richmond and into eastern North Carolina. Icing probably the bigger problem here. And then you see the winter storm warnings that extend all the way down through the mountains of western Virginia, the western and central North Carolina, northwestern South Carolina, northeastern Georgia. And by the way, high wind warnings are up in the track of the upper low, which is really key here for the deep south as far as snowfall is concerned, getting a lot of wind. Already seen some gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour today. So in the meantime, let's take a look. I'm going to just run a couple of models here because everything here is pretty straightforward with respect to what's going to be going on. And I'm going to use, this is the latest dam model that was out at 3 a.m. this morning. You are now approaching, the 9 o'clock hour. So I'll just bring you up to that point, which is right here. There's the low center in southwestern Georgia. You see the freezing rain and the snow. Also back over through Tennessee. The model is probably not picking up the extent of the cold air with the upper low from what I'm seeing. The surface low redevelops near Charleston. Now the upper low swings eastward. You start to see the snow, sleet, and freezing rain moving northward. The areas across Alabama, Georgia, into south and western North Carolina and in Tennessee all go to all snow probably around early afternoon. The low moves up the coast. Look for snow to arrive in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area probably around, say, 1 or 2 o'clock. Should reach Philadelphia probably at around 5 or 6. New York City at about 7. Up to Albany at about 8 or 9, moving into southern New England, reaching eastern Connecticut roughly at about 11 o'clock, and it looks like it gets to Boston at about 1 a.m. A couple of things of note in Florida, across the Panhandle and down into the state of Florida, we're going to have a pretty healthy looking line of showers and thunderstorms that are going to be moving through, and there's the potential here for severe weather. And then that severe weather threat also exists for eastern North Carolina once the low moves up there very late in the afternoon and into the first part of tonight, even into southeastern Virginia. For the coast, you see that rain shield moves northward. It's going to have a screaming east to southeast wind that's going to develop during late this afternoon down in areas near Delaware Bay and Chesapeake Bay, winds picking up. The strongest winds are going to be overnight into tomorrow morning. Coastal flooding, at least moderate coastal flooding will occur. Some places it might be even a bit more than that. We've got a full moon for tomorrow, so tides are rising into that full moon. The low moves northward. This is now at 7 a.m. So the precipitation's long done in southern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, down into Maryland and Delaware. The changeover to rain, I think, could make it all the way up north of I-90, by the way, during the overnight into the first part of tomorrow morning. Everybody else will stay snow. You can see the load pretty much tracks to the west and then heads on up into New England. I want to go over, at least for the folks in the south, because the important thing here is going to be the track of the upper low. And what we're talking about here, when we say an upper low, we're talking about a system that's up there at about 18,000 feet. And you can see the signature there on the satellite, on the GFS. This is the upper low right here. And normally, when you follow the track of the upper low, that's as vigorous as this, you have a lot of cold air aloft, and there's going to be a lot of mixing of that cold air down to the surface, which is why you're going to see temperatures cool to below freezing and precipitation become mostly snow, especially during this afternoon. So it's usually north of the track of the upper low out to about maybe 70 or 80 miles. That you wind up seeing what you could see the potential for some bands of heavy snow, and that upper low tracks across central Alabama and then moves up into northeastern Georgia. So that's where the biggest risks are: northern Alabama, northern Georgia, north of Atlanta, into western South Carolina, western North Carolina. With the upper low, this is where you could wind up with some very heavy snows, and also in areas in eastern Tennessee that are not getting the mountain shadow that often occurs. That upper low lifts up, and the track is inland. So this is why the coastal low goes inland, and the big snows, again, go about, say, 70, 80 miles north and west of the upper low. Your heaviest snows with the track of a surface low in east central Pennsylvania means western Pennsylvania, western New York, southwestern New York, they get the big snows out of this. And then, of course, once we get the storm to lift up into Canada, weather conditions improve tomorrow. Just a quick look at the long range Tuesday. We're going into Wednesday. We're going to have some cold air around. Down the road, the GFS has it, then doesn't have it, and this is kind of where it usually is about 7 days in. But we're going to have another setup here where we're going to probably warm up a bit on Wednesday. Then an Arctic front will approach on Thursday, and we have a diving trough into the southeastern part of the United States. And I think this needs to be watched carefully for the very end of this coming week and into the weekend. It's another one of these vigorous systems that is moving down. There's a lot of working pieces to this, much like we saw a week ago with the system we're dealing with this weekend, and we see how that turned out. This one, I think, has probably a better chance to impact coastal areas and not take an inland track based on what we're looking at right now. But it's very early in the game. It could wind up getting suppressed, which means it's more of a system for the mid-Atlantic and the southeastern states with the developing low offshore. Long way to go to figure this out. Okay, weather in 5 brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. 631-756-1125 is the phone number, and the website is omnitruevalue.com. So we'll keep an eye on all the goings on here with respect to this particular storm. Joe and Joe Weather Show, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, to update you on everything that's going on. And who knows, maybe I'll be snowing here at that time, and hopefully I'll still have power.